All right, there we go. Pardon the pop in the microphone if that's what happened. I'm using the headset because I think the audio comes out better. But this is video 675, and it's going to be a bit about. I've kind of am at the precipice. I need to do some soul searching today, and I've been procrastinating a little bit at doing it. Um, this topic on my mind is voice training. Voice training. In the past, you can look over the channel here. I can think of at least two periods of my life that I really put a really solid effort into voice training, and this is the third time. But this time I'm actually reached out to a professional voice trainer, and so I don't necessarily know if the first two times count, but there's a bit of an undercurrent with voice training, and I'd have to tell you a bit of background for myself is uh, if you don't know from watching the channel, I transitioned when I was in my 20s. And obviously you can see by my hair, I'm not 20 years old now. I'm 48. But when I was in my 20s, I transitioned and fully transitioned, lived as a woman, was on hormones, all that good stuff. And one of the things that a friend of mine had said to me, because I'm a dungeon master as well, DM, Dungeons and Dragons. He said to me at the time, he said, I don't know how this is going to work for you because one of the things that I really enjoy about your games is your voice. He says you really do bring to life your non-player characters, your NPCs. He says you use your voice dynamically, whether it's, and I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to talk as myself, but you know, whether you're talking as a old person or a young person, you do different accents. You use your voice, and he says, I just. He says, well, I support you, and I wish you the best of luck in all that you do. He says, I really am going to miss that. And I kind of looked at him and I said, well, thank you. He says, I give me something to think about. And of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be an or situation. You can have a female voice and do voice stuff, but um, and a lot of it is use. I think, and again, I'm not going to disclose any information about how voice training works because I respect the people that do it, and that's how they make their livelihood. So I don't want to cheat them out of anything, but obviously it's a muscle, your throat, and the more you use it, the better off it is, right? I mean, it makes sense. If you were lifting weights, the more repetitions you do, the stronger the muscle, right? So that's part of what voice training is. But, um, at the time, again, if you're very active, then your voice is very flexible. And I was then, and I am a little bit now because I'm DMing a game playing today. As a matter of fact, later tonight. And, the same kind of thing applies. My NPCs are, I have at least 15 NPCs in game, and by no means do I consider myself professional or as good as someone like Seth. I can't think of his last name right now. He does all the voices for Family Guy. Seth MacFarlane. Seth MacFarlane can have a conversation between Peter Griffin, Brian, and Stewie and make it sound like three different people, and it's all him. He can instantly flip between these three characters, and you, in your theater of the mind, they're three separate people. But in reality, it's one person, one mic, and that's kind of my game, the way I play it. I try to strive for that. So whether it be jumping from a voice and the lower part of my larynx to up and down, I mean, you just have to be able to do it on command. And so I think the more that I do the voice training, you know, the more it's going to be, and I assume at this point, not knowing what the professional does, what the professional thinks, it's a matter of finding a home in your larynx that's going to be where your natural speaking voice is going to be, or your, in this case, the feminine speaking voice is going to be. And it's moving out of wherever you are now. I'm not flipping you off I'm using my index finger. My point, is this my pointer? I don't know. I think it is my pointer finger. They say it's impolite to point. They got a point there. But if my normal voice is coming out of here, I guess you could kind of figure out where the resonance is coming from. And I, am able to naturally, because of DMing and whatnot, I can go up and down. But let's say I find a new home up here, and that becomes my home base. That becomes my speaking voice. I think it's possible to retain access to that other set, of where you just have to mentally train your muscles, I think, and remember kind of where you're at. Sorry, checking on my son. Hi. Yeah, we're here, baby. Making a video. Alright. One of the best things I ever did. I adopted a son. But anyway, so why the video? I think because in the past two times that, no, don't mess with the cord. The past two times and before that I had done voice work and voice training. Number one, I'm sure if you use headphones and a mic, the way that you sound in real life differs from the way you sound without a headset. Your brain and your ears naturally do a bit of equalization and filtering of your voice, and so it helps to get a tape recorder. And I can remember maybe a time before, but definitely a time before YouTube. I had a little when I was in college. I had a little a recorder you record your professor on, and then you can switch the speed on it, make it sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And I literally kept that thing in my pocket and would record myself in the feminine voice and play it back, just so I would get instantaneous feedback. Okay, is my pitch right? Is my intonation right? And I think I talked the other day in a video a couple times ago. And again, not to disclose, I mean, this is common knowledge. I'm not disclosing anything you don't already know if you do a YouTube search. But it's the feminine is not pitch related. Look at Cher. Cher's got a deep voice. She's a woman. I mean, it's intonation. It's the words. It's your vernacular. It's what you use, which can be regionally based, obviously. Someone in Louisiana is going to be different than someone who lives up in Maine, than someone who, I mean, look at British accents. You have people in Wales with certain accents, and Cornwall, and northern the UK, and Ireland, and I mean, it's how they sound. Their accent also plays a part, and like I said, the words that they use and whatnot, and your intonation, where you put emphasis, how you your volume when you talk, when you ask questions. Does it curl up at the end? Does it go down at the end? I don't know. But anyway, speech stuff. That again, that's where you go to an expert. What was I going to say about this? Oh, was just the amount of freedom that I felt, using a more feminine voice than the voice I'm using right now. The certain amount of the ability to, like if I was to say, and I'm not going to do it now, I'm not ready. My voice is I'm not loosened up yet to do feminine stuff. Gosh, I can't. If I totaled up all the tea that I used to drink so much hot tea during the day just to loosen up my throat, and the amount of damage that I did trying to flex it. But anyway, where were we going with that? Um, but the amount of freedom that I felt, like saying something is beautiful, or oh, isn't it, gorgeous, or I'm trying to think of a good expression. And some of it is masculine versus feminine, and unfortunately, we're people of our time, and what we were raised to be masculine and feminine, and so you wouldn't have a stereotypical, at least from my age and stage, from the society that formed me. You wouldn't have a very masculine, tough guy, saying, you know, oh, those flowers are so very beautiful, and da, da, da. I'm trying to, I can't think on the top of my head. I'm sorry. My videos, as I've said before on this channel, they're spontaneous. I don't think about them beforehand, so you're getting pure unedited me. But my computer keeps on interrupting me here. Sorry. Um, but I don't know. You'd have to look at. There's an episode of Ranma One Half where and I forget the name of it, but Ranma gets conked on the head or something and has amnesia and has forgotten that he's really a boy, and so in his girl form, there's just some things that to see girl Ranma do. It's you're talking about dresses and flowers and how that she abhors violence and she wants to learn how to cook, and I mean just so much stuff that you're like, well, boy, Ranma wouldn't say that. It's that liberating thing that I think as a, and pardon me for being so male to female oriented, but those are the things that I guess we wanted to do. We wanted to. I know for myself when I was younger, as a boy, I wanted to wear the dresses. I wanted to be, I wanted to be like my mommy. I wanted to be like my mom and wear dresses and not necessarily high heel shoes, but girls' clothes. And uh, it's like giving yourself permission to, in the same way as dressing, I guess, is a personal choice in what you want to do. The voice expression is another layer of that. It's again, it's that communication. It's conveying information, but interfacing with society and the world around you. And so I guess part of me is at this stage, attempt number 3, let's say. We'll call it number 3. It's probably more like number 7, but we'll call it number 3. Um, you know, in the past, I convinced myself that my voice was definitely more feminine, and whether it was delusional or not, I don't know. But I felt such a sense of freedom, freedom of expression, and um, when that collapsed, and I was like, no, it doesn't sound authentic, it doesn't sound right. When that collapsed, I went into my cave. I was like, to hell with this, and I went into my cave and I just uh, licked my wounds, and I felt very defeated. And that is a concern I have of attempt number 3, is that it's going to lead to that. And I recognize you could say, well, The only one who is going to judge what's masculine, feminine for you is you, and the only person who can say what's authentic and what's right or wrong for you is you. And, you know, I recognize that. In the same way, we say whether we want to be pretty or beautiful or whatnot, the only person who can determine what's pretty and beautiful is ourselves, which is kind of sucky because we see ourselves through our own eyes and we look in the mirror and it's like we don't see reality. We see a man. We see our limitations. We see our fallacies. We don't necessarily see what other people see. Which is why you so often see, if someone would say, well, if you could only see yourself through my eyes, you would see something different. We are our harshest critics, that kind of shit. So that's kind of an issue. While I'm enthusiastic about it, at the same time I'm very, very afraid. I'm afraid of the letdown. The other thing that again, some background. Currently, I had some blood clots in November, and so the doctors immediately blamed the estrogen, and so I am off estrogen for a year. That was the diagnosis, was I had to be off estrogen for a year. So I'm not on any sort of estrogen, no progesterone, those kinds of things, because my body supposedly gets blood clots. And so I'm kind of boo-hooey. And so I don't, I feel very much like I don't feel like a guy and I don't feel like a girl. I just feel like, not even like a mannequin or a scarecrow. I feel like a nobody. I don't have that euphoria from the estrogen. I don't have the sense of femininity from the estrogen that I used to get. You could probably say it's all in your head anyway, but I don't quite have that. And my body, because of the SRS, I don't have something within me producing testosterone, but I don't have anything producing estrogen either. So my body is kind of going, okay, well, which blueprint do we use? We kind of went down this path, and then we went down this path, and now what in the hell we do? My body is not getting direction on what to do, and of course it can't manufacture large quantities of estrogen. So, I feel very, what's the word? Agender? Non-gender? I feel just like nobody, And my breasts have gone away. My body hair has come back. There's a whole lot of secondary It reminds me of when I detransitioned when I was younger. Of course, again, and when I was in my 20s, my body was by far more malleable and open to change. But anyway, let's not. We're going down a road of a pity party here, and that's not what I want to do. We'll talk about voice training, and so it's kind of hard. I don't have that push, I don't have a push to do anything right now. I could be exercising to take advantage of this moment and lose some weight. I could be. I'm definitely, if you can't tell, morbidly obese again. I gained all my weight back from my surgery. I had to lose 120 pounds, and I did, and I've gained it all back. I could be exercising. There's things I could be doing. I could be exercising. The voice training definitely, I think, is part of that. At least I'm doing something. I'm still doing, obviously, laser treatments and electrolysis. I'm still transitioning. I'm still doing things, I think, to make me more feminine or more happier with myself, or I don't know, justifiable. I don't know. I don't know the right words. things I want to do. And so that's kind of why the voice, kind of when the opportunity presented itself, I kind of jumped on it. And I said, well, yeah, it would be nice to, let's try it. Let's try it. Try it out. See how it goes. Um, Another concern I have about the voice training is, and obviously transitioned, I'm not afraid of transitioning, but your voice is definitely how you integrate with the world around you. And so, how do I go from my current voice to a different voice at work, at home? The last time I tried to monkey with my voice on my own, and I thought it was fairly convincing and authentic. My daughter just threw up her hands one day and said, I can't take it anymore. She said, I can't take that voice, you know. And so, out of consideration for her, I stopped. Um, and so, going forward, I'm kind of wondering if it's something that maybe I work on and develop on the side, keep it on the back burner, and then, maybe when my daughter moves out, or maybe in the presence of my daughter, I don't use it. I don't know. This is new water for me. This is new area. Um, when you transition slowly, right? You take the hormones, and we're all like, "Oh, please work, 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 work quickly. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now." But it takes a good 7, 8, 9 months to really see any changes. And when you're doing voice training and you're speaking, and I apologize, I don't know the numbers, but let's say you're speaking at a certain frequency or pitch, and you change that by 100 hertz or something, I mean, it is noticeable. It's not a, you know what I mean? I mean, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe can you do it in increments? Up your pitch. And I know, like I said, it's not total pitch. It's intonation. It's word choice. It's inflection. But is there a slow way to do it? So it's not such a hard shift. You know. I think a successful transition comes from a slow transition. Give people the opportunity to grow and accept. God forbid someone decides, on Friday I'm a man, and on Monday I'm a woman, and I know at a workplace officially you do that. You say from so and such point on, Joe is now Mary. Mr. Smith will be Mrs. Smith or whatever. I know legally you do that in an your HR department will do that, but you still, because your body is physically changing, it's a slow transition. People in a way have a chance to get used to it. Even though, you can go 9 to 12 months on hormones and you're still presenting as masculine, and then you come in on the next day and you're presenting as feminine. I acknowledge there is a switch, but with your voice, I mean, it's night and day. Particularly if you have a very deep, and if you resonate one day and you don't resonate. Like I said, I don't know. I'm afraid, not afraid of it, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned. I'm concerned. And I'll give you a really practical example of that. When I had my GCS, when I had surgery, SRS, GCS, ICS, you scream, I scream, we all scream for ice cream. Um, I had, what is it, 6 weeks recovery time, right? Well, I really invested a lot of time into voice training. I really tried to soften my voice. really tried to adjust my pitch, and I felt really good about it. And I went back to work and tried to use that voice, which is very hard to do on command. You get so used to it, in your own private microcosm. You get so used to, doing whatever you want to do, and it's safe because no one's listening. But I went into work, and my supervisor looked at me like, "Are you sick? Is something wrong?" And I guess I could have, should have, would have said, "No, I'm fine. Thank you for asking," and continue in that female voice. But I I was overwhelmed with fear, doubt, and self-doubt. You know, we're no strangers to self-doubt in this process. No strangers to that. So, I guess my second point is I'm definitely afraid of doing that and it not working out and then coming back and not biting me in the ass, but again, and maybe there's a medium, maybe there's a happy, I guess that's the good thing about a support group or whatnot is you can try that out, much like uh you know much like transitioning, or when you're thinking about it, when you're exploring it, and you go to your first support group meeting, and you decide to go in femme, as they say, in femme mode, and it can be quite a liberating, but also a very scary experience to open that door for the first time and to take your first few steps, into a much bigger world and a world that you've always imagined. So maybe that's part of it too, and maybe it's the kind of thing I can practice. I can go through the drive-through and practice using my voice, and maybe I see that as probably going to be my next thing, is to work that into the more comfort that I feel at it. Work that into it, and who knows, maybe I will be able to do what Seth MacFarlane does, and have two home bases in my larynx, and then be able to switch between the two of them on command, as needed. And maybe when I'm by myself, I talk in one register, and then when I'm with my daughter, I talk in another. Or I don't know. I guess that's one way to try it out, right? A learner's permit for voice. Um, I think that's it. This process goes on and on. There's no end to it. There's no end to it. I guess maybe there could be. I don't know, depending on what you want. But I, mistakenly thought that surgery was going to be the end all be all, and nope. Life goes on. There's other things that pop up. And really, I guess that's about it. It's time to get off my ass and get working. But I just wanted to share some concerns. I needed to talk it through. Um, the other thing, I guess, as a postscript is we can say it's, your voice can be whatever you want it to be. I think it just has to be authentic. And of course, again, that's up to us. Maybe that's my own fear. It's my own fear of rejection from people. And of course, what difference does it make at Meijer or the grocery store? Someone you're never going to see again. You know. Um, if you're happy with it, what the hell difference does it make, right? If you're happy with your voice, what the hell difference does it make? What someone else thinks, right? Food for thought. What else can I say? But yeah, I've also learned a bit of appreciation too as deep as my voice is, and you know, I go to the drive-through and I don't change anything, and I get mammed. Um, but you know, there are men out there. There are trans women. Rephrase that. There are people out there that, you know, have a much deeper voice, or they resonate, and you know, I'm not as bad as I thought I was, even though I think I'm pretty bad as far as deep deep voice goes. But I think that's about it. I think I'm just done pulling yarn. Talked about a lot of things. Fear of rejection is another one. And again, here's the third one. Here's a different one. Outing yourself again. I'm gonna out myself again. I started a job 4 weeks ago, and you know, again, to switch my voice, people are gonna be like, "Why the hell is she switching her voice?" You know, that's something that kind of concerns me too, and that falls more on the first point that I made is I've got myself into an expression, and I had to break it, and it, like I said, the depression that came after it. But I don't know. Something I alluded to in the other video I made was losing myself. You know, right now I'm probably come across as a very judgmental old fuck. And I feel like I have retained in my transition a lot of my head male masculine mentality. You know, I feel like my brain is still kind of running some of that male calmness, um, intelligence, for lack of a better word. I don't even know if that's the right word for it. Persona, you know. I feel like a wise old man, and I could become a wise old woman. I mean, there's no reason why I can't. But I know that my first two, you know, attempts at a more feminine voice, I was moving into a different space, and that, you know, part of that logic brain, I'm so logic brain oriented, I'm so head brained. You know, you think back to computers, especially in movies, logic and computers, they don't like to be turned off. Look at HAL, you know, HAL 9000 in 2001. Uh, you know, that sense of self-preservation and um, you know, part of my brain, I feel like is gonna die. I'm gonna lose it, you know. And you could kind of go back to, is it really your voice or your brain or your personality? You know, I growing up, I never really felt like a whole person. As a boy, I was very incomplete. And as a teenager, I knew something was wrong, and I wanted more. I wanted more out of life. I wasn't happy. I had these feelings, and God was, you know, not necessarily punishing me, but, you know, I was asking God so much, you know, please turn me into a girl, turn me into a woman. And why is there so much suffering? Which, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this. I can continue along that train of thought. I mean, in my 20s, and I you know, I couldn't explain why I felt so when I cross dressed. After the initial guilt and whatnot of cross dressing, I couldn't explain why I felt so good in the sense of freedom and expression. And it made me just then, when I realized, well, I'm trans, this is what I have to do. As that sense of personality and self changes, and definitely in the transition process, as that personality, we say, you may not be the same person coming out of your transition as you were going in. And there's a sense of that inner self that doesn't want to die, that doesn't want to perish, that doesn't want to, you know, that doesn't want to cease to exist. And I feel maybe like that's part of my last male bastion of defense in my brain that doesn't want to give up, doesn't want to give it up, doesn't want to, doesn't want to surrender itself. It wants to maintain it. The last, like I said, the last castle of masculinity doesn't want to give itself up. And I know that when I speak with a feminine voice, like I did the first few times, it doesn't, it can't jive, it can't coexist. Maybe parts of it can be assimilated, but again, part of me is afraid of death. The death of that. And you could say, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but I don't know. I don't know. There was a trans woman one time who talked about her former self as someone who she was very appreciative to because he carried her through some rough periods of her life. He nurtured her, he protected her, and in the end he sacrificed himself so she could continue, so she could live. And she addressed her former self as someone who passed away, that she remembers his memory. She venerates him. It wasn't like, oh, my damned existence as a man. It was, this person, this other self who carried me and protected me, and she revered him. She appreciated him, and in the end, somewhat I think assimilated some of her former self, some of his strengths and attributes into her. And I wonder if maybe that's the direction I can take. And I made a video not that long ago about past aspects of my life and crumpling them up and throwing them away. I don't necessarily think that's a good analogy, but it feels that way sometimes. We are a product of our environment, our strengths, and we're affected by that. The older we are, the harder. And I guess I better end this because it's getting kind of long, but I'll leave with one other point. I wonder how true it is where I'm at in my life, 48 years old. But I wonder how true it is to say trans women are women. And here's why. Women know, but in a binary world, this is all going to be binary, and if you're not binary, God bless you. You won't get it, or you don't believe in it, and that's fine because it's your life. But my existence, binary. We're impacted by our lives, and depending on how long we live the facade of being masculine, being male, we're affected by it. We're affected by our environment. And so I don't think it's really realistic to say, I live my life as a man and I'm a woman now. And we're probably splitting hairs here. but I almost think it's saying I'm living my life as much as a woman as I can. Because there are things we have seen, things we have done, things we've experienced that we experienced as a male that enters our body, enters our psyche, enters our system, and is part of us, you know. In the same way that we've never experienced menstruation, okay? And you could obviously say, well, there's girls out there who haven't experienced menstruation either. Okay, fine. But there are some aspects of our life that we've experienced that have changed us. And we're something else. I don't know. I don't necessarily know what we are, and obviously, I don't want to make a general blanket statement that's for everybody. But I really do think we're something else. We're a third something. We're something else. And granted, we have the option to shed a lot of that, but we're changed by it. We're changed by it. There was a person in Atlanta who came up with the concept of a GEM, a gender enhanced male. I don't necessarily think that applies, but it's food for thought. Food for thought. Maybe that's why we continue to need therapy for the rest of our lives to deal with the stuff we experienced earlier on. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to end it. Bye bye. Good luck.